Hey guys, Jay Nelson here once again. So this is the third time I've made this video because I just end up rambling, but I'm going to try again. Actually, today is my 12-year Japan anniversary. 12 years ago, I came to Japan. So it's a pretty special time to talk about how I think Japan has maybe changed in the time that I've been here. So people who kind of follow YouTubers in Japan might have seen a little bit of drama that's gone on. I'm not going to go into the drama because it is very silly on both sides, very, very silly. But they have been talking about, is Japan getting worse? Has Japan changed? Is it being ruined by foreign tourists? And I just kind of want to give a little bit of an insight as to somebody who just lives a normal life here in Japan, not kind of protected by being a bit famous and, a bit, wealthier, because people obviously see things from different perspectives. And I can honestly say over the last 12 years, Japan has got much better in many different ways, maybe worse in some ways, but overall it's got much, much better. Some parts are greatly over-exaggerated. Like, I think this anti-foreigner rhetoric that keeps getting spread on social media, I think is greatly overblown, since they haven't said they're going to kick foreigners out or stop foreigners coming in. They're basically just trying to tighten up the rules and make things, a bit more streamlined and fair for everyone, which I think all countries should do. And on the anti-foreigner rhetoric, like, other countries literally have protests in the street, government agents or people who are contracted by the government to come and rip people out of their workplaces, being assaulted in the street, all sorts of terrible stuff happening. So, maybe some no-name, no-face people on social media saying Jibun no kuni kaere, I don't think is necessarily massive anti-foreigner rhetoric. And if you are here doing the things that you should be doing, following the rules, you are literally going to have zero problems. I see a lot of people making videos of stories which are clearly made up, of being like confronted by Japanese people in the street and told to go home. But it's greatly over exaggerated. I think you should really look at things a bit more, fairly and openly. It's not perfect by any means, but I think, don't overblow everything, because that's just going to make everyone else panic. Anyway, ways in which Japan has got better. First of all, childcare and working situations has got much better, I think. Working in childcare for the last 7 years has shown me that, nursery places are way more available. Not perfect, but way more available. It's getting cheaper and cheaper. Ichikawa City, where my school is free from 0 years old for a public school if you've got siblings. And it's 3 for 3 years plus. Well, basically, except for like maybe lunch fees and stuff like that. But, paying about 20,000 yen a month for childcare. And we're talking like 40 plus hours a week of childcare, because they've got to be there longer than you're working, because you've got to go pick them up and drop them off. Has definitely got much, much better. It will probably create a bubble in the future of people wanting to go back to kindergartens, as people realize kids are probably not benefiting 100% from being trapped in these nurseries for 12 hours a day. And I think they'll start to revert back to education at some point. And the number of abuse in childcare, shisetsu's, like, places, will get worse inevitably. It's just inevitable, no matter what country you're in. The more childcare there is, the more problems that will arise. That's just every industry, anything that will happen. Working has got better. Paternity leave has got better. Percentage of men taking childcare leave has got better every year. Overtime has got better. Well, from my friends and my acquaintances, they're doing much less overtime than they used to. There's a lot less pressure at work. Mental health is being looked at a little better in the workplace. My company does a mental health check every single month. And if the system flags that you're not doing so well, the HR will get in touch with you and see if you're okay. Little things are getting better like that. Salaries, unfortunately, are not getting better. In fact, they're probably getting much worse. The salaries are very, very low compared to other countries. But even for Japan, like they're not great. Like I was looking at full-time positions for like Japanese people working in the new shopping mall, and you're talking about 220,000 yen a month full time plus possible overtime, which will be paid, of course. That's something that used to be a thing. They didn't used to pay for overtime. But 220,000 yen a month, I mean, if the husband and the wife, or the husband and the husband, or the wife and the wife, if they both make 220,000 yen a month, I suppose you could have a semi-okay life, but it's not going to be a wonderful life. Between me and my wife's salary, we make around 1.3 million yen a month. So we are very, very lucky. And I did mention at the beginning that I was talking like, comparing people who are a bit wealthier. I do consider myself very lucky to have the income that we do, especially because we live in Chiba, and it goes much, much further than if we lived in Tokyo. And salary progression is not really as good as it used to be. It used to be that you could just kind of naturally get more and more pay rises, and then basically if you were in your 40s and 50s, a lot of people would be on like 10 million yen a year. That doesn't really happen much anymore. Salaries kind of stagnate a lot. But it does mean that now Japanese people are bouncing between jobs a lot more. The thing used to be like you could stay in a job for life. You're expected to stay in a job for life, but the whole tenshoku katsudo, moving, changing jobs, has become a big thing in Japan. And that's something that Japanese people should do. They should kind of see what's out there and get the best job for them. Now, tourism has increased a lot since COVID has ended. COVID still exists as a disease, of course, but the pandemic is over. And of course, foreign tourism obviously brings in a bit more international, a lot of different people, and a lot of Japanese people do get used to those things. But I think a lot of problems do come up about, and it's not just in Japan. You see stories of I think it was like Barcelona and some places in Italy where the locals started to protest against tourism because tourists tend to congregate in the same place. And now imagine if you owned a house in a particular place in Japan that maybe some tourists would trickle through every year, but now you've got like thousands and thousands of people going through every month. You'd be a bit annoyed, I think. So tourism increasing is great because it's good for the economy. It does help keep prices in Japan low because they've got people who will buy a lot. And prices in Japan, although there are people in poverty, of course, and it's awful for them, I do donate money to, I think this year I gave money to a rice fund for single parent families where, my donation bought like a 10-kilogram bag for a couple of families, like not one bag between them, like a bag each. I just donated to like a Christmas present fund for some single parent families. I donated about 20 kilograms worth of food to the Ichikawa Food Bank. And I also gave money to a kind of disabled child shelter in Funabashi. Not shelter, like kind of like place where they can kind of go and develop their skills. And then all of my Furusato Noze, which is kind of like your tax, you can buy nice things. I always choose the childcare and, funding for children-facing programs, children-connected programs. I always choose those when I do my Furusato Noze. So I do try to give to people when I can, but there are people in poverty, of course. However, Japan is relatively cheap, especially for the quality of what you can get. The other day, we went to the new opening of a food court in my local city. I mean, there's a huge shopping mall here in Funabashi. My daughter had a gyutan, which is like a beef tongue, chicken and hamburg set, which came with a large rice, a large drink, a soup, and like pickled vegetables. And it was 1,200 yen, like £6, $8-ish. I mean, you can't really argue with that. It's insane how good the price is on stuff like that. And Japan is keeping its kind of labor prices low because a lot of food industry, like a lot of restaurants or the food court stalls are manned by foreign staff nowadays, and you can pay them minimum wage. Which is just how the economy works. Convenience stores are all basically foreigners nowadays. maybe with a Japanese manager. There are too many convenience stores, but there are a lot more foreigners here now. The jobs that foreigners can do have definitely increased. You know, when I came to Japan, you were basically an English teacher, and then one day you might be a translator. Now, you know, basically you can do any kind of job in Japan. I mean, you can't be a policeman or an ambulance driver or something like that, but you can work in social media, you can be a recruiter, you can be a lawyer, you can work in an office, you can be a childcare staff like a nursery teacher as long as you can get the license. There's so much stuff you can do now as long as you can get the visa and your language ability is good. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do. However, there are, unfortunately, and I don't want to kind of jump on the bandwagon of the anti-foreigner movement, but there are a lot of bad eggs that come when a lot of people are invited into a country. And unfortunately, it's not just the foreigners as well. I think young Japanese people are also changing a lot thanks to social media and the absolute brain rot of things like TikTok and stuff like that, where they're kind of doing a lot of stupid stuff because it's funny, and it's kind of unfortunate. The other day I was walking my dogs at 5 a.m. and we're in a very residential area in like Funabashi, Chiba, and it was 5 o'clock and there was about 30, and I'm going to say Sri Lanka because that's where one of the guys said they were from. They were all drunk, carrying bottles of alcohol, shouting and screaming at 5 o'clock in the morning. And they kind of approached me, which I didn't like because I was with my dogs, and 30 people being near you with the dogs, they kind of start barking, of course. But Japanese people wouldn't do that, especially in an area like this, because why would they do that in a residential area? And I think when people see that, that's the impression of foreigners that will get. Unfortunately, you shouldn't form your opinion based on one thing. If they only see the negatives on the news or stuff like that and don't have a chance to have positive interactions, it's hardly, you know, basically every country in the world is going through an anti-immigration or right-wing movement nowadays. So it's kind of inevitable that Japan would do the same. However, we must do our part to be good people and make sure the impressions stay good. No matter what other people do in this country, it doesn't affect me, what I do, my standing in this community. And I'm not going to turn bitter and be against all, because the irony is that people start to lash out against Japan, saying that it's not all foreigners, but at the same time, they're kind of lashing out at the whole country, saying it's all Japanese people, which we know is not true. So those are a few positives and negatives that I've experienced in terms of changes over the past 12 years. Please let me know what you think. Hopefully this is the version I can finally upload, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.